In the Pacific island nation of Tonga, a police minister stopped an air ambulance from landing. Not because of bad weather, not because of a security threat, because it was Sunday. In Samoa, the Prime Minister stood before his nation and declared that all work would be banned on Sundays. And then his government named the National Council of Churches the country's official prayer warriors. In North Carolina, a state elections board chairman looked at his colleagues and said plainly, "I don't think we should be voting on Sunday. I know lots of people who do nothing on Sunday because that's the Lord's day." Then he eliminated Sunday voting in 6 counties. These are not stories from the distant past. These events happened in January 2026. And while the world focused on the Heritage Foundation's call for uniform Sunday laws in America, something far more significant was unfolding beneath the surface. Sunday enforcement is not coming. It is already here. What you are about to hear is a documented trail of laws, court cases, government decrees, and grassroots movements stretching from the South Pacific to the American Bible Belt, to the corridors of the European Union and the chambers of the United Nations. And when you lay these pieces side by side, a pattern emerges that students of Bible prophecy have warned about for more than a century. The prophet Daniel saw a power that would think to change times and laws. Daniel 7:25. Today, that change is not hypothetical. It is being written into legislation, embedded in constitutions, and enforced by police. Hold that picture in your mind, because it leads us to the first place on this journey, a place most people would never think to look. On January 9th, 2026, the Prime Minister of Samoa made an announcement that would have been unthinkable in most modern democracies. He declared that, from that day forward, his government would impose strict bans on all work, carried out on Sundays. His exact words were clear and left no room for interpretation. From this Sunday forth, the government will impose strict bans on all works to be carried out on Sundays. Except for government essential services and the necessary traders to supply the country's basic needs, all other works will be banned on Sundays. This was not framed as a labor reform. This was not presented as a wellness initiative. The government explicitly stated that the purpose was to prevent activity that disrespects the keeping of the Sabbath holy. In the 21st century, a democratic government used the word Sabbath to justify a national work ban. 2 days later, on January 11th, 2026, the head of state formalized the policy even further. He proclaimed a national period of prayer and fasting from January 11th to 16th and mandated weekly Wednesday prayers and fasting for all government ministries. But perhaps the most remarkable detail was this. The government officially designated the National Council of Churches as official prayer warriors for Samoa. Think about what that means. A government of a sovereign democratic nation formally partnered with religious institutions and gave them an official role in the governance of the country. Church and state were no longer merely cooperating, they were merging. And when the Samoan Chamber of Commerce and Industry requested that the government at least allow limited Sunday business hours to keep the economy moving, the Prime Minister refused without hesitation. He rejected arguments from construction companies who said they needed Sunday work to meet deadlines. Some construction companies say they need to work on Sundays to get the work completed on time. I don't agree with that. The economy would wait. Sunday rest would not. Samoa already had existing Sunday work restrictions before this announcement, but construction companies and other businesses had been quietly operating on Sundays for years. What changed in January 2026 was not the law itself, but the enforcement and the language. The government cracked down, and it did so using the most explicit religious justification imaginable. This is not a theocracy on the other side of the world. This is a parliamentary democracy in the Pacific, and it just told its citizens that the government will enforce Sunday as a holy day. We saw a modern democratic government enforcing Sunday rest with explicitly religious language, and merging church and state in a formal partnership. Next, we travel to another Pacific island nation, where the stakes are even higher, because in Tonga, Sunday law enforcement is a matter of life and death. What is happening in Samoa is not isolated. In the nearby island kingdom of Tonga, Sunday enforcement is not a new policy. It is written into the nation's very constitution. Article 6 of the Tongan Constitution states plainly, "The Sabbath day shall be kept holy in Tonga, and no person shall practice his trade or profession, or conduct any commercial undertaking on the Sabbath day, except according to law, and any agreement made or witnessed on that day shall be null and void, and of no legal effect." Read that again carefully. Any agreement, any contract, any deal made on a Sunday in Tonga is automatically void. It has no legal standing. The day itself is protected by the supreme law of the land. Violations carry fines up to $100 or imprisonment up to 6 months. Banned activities include playing sports, dancing, fishing, and any form of business trading. Even King Tupu VI has issued formal statements calling on the entire nation to keep the Sabbath holy. But here's the detail that should stop every viewer in their tracks. Police Minister Paula Piukala recently stopped an air ambulance from landing in Tonga, citing the Sunday law. An air ambulance, a medical flight. Someone needed emergency medical transport, and a government minister intervened because the flight was happening on a Sunday. When a law created to honor God's day is used to prevent someone from receiving emergency medical care, we are no longer discussing a minor cultural tradition. We are seeing the kind of rigid, coercive enforcement that Bible prophecy describes in the last days. A power would arise that would control what people do when they do it and punish those who do not comply. 2 nations in the Pacific are already living that reality, and they are not alone. We have traced Sunday enforcement across the Pacific, from government decrees to constitutional law to the grounding of medical flights. Now let us cross the ocean and look at what is happening inside the United States, because the language being used in American government buildings will sound disturbingly familiar. On January 13th and 14th, 2026, the North Carolina State Board of Elections convened to decide early voting schedules for the state's counties. What should have been a routine administrative matter became something far more troubling. Board Chairman Francis X. DeLuca stated plainly and on the record, "I don't think we should be voting on Sunday. I know lots of people who do nothing on Sunday because that's the Lord's day." He then added that poll workers should be allowed to rest on Sundays. This was not a private opinion shared in a church pew. This was a public official, sitting in an official government proceeding, using religious language to justify eliminating a civic right. And then the board voted to do exactly that. The board eliminated Sunday early voting in Brunswick, Craven, Greene, Harnett, Wayne, and Columbus counties, voting 3-2 along party lines in each case. In Columbus County, something remarkable happened. The Republican board chair, Jillian McPherson Edge, actually broke with her own party. She examined the data and found that more voters used Sunday voting than any additional Saturday that could be offered. She supported keeping Sunday hours. She told reporters plainly, "The Republicans on my board do not want Sunday voting for religious reasons. Then the Democrats want Sundays because they feel like it's more accessible to people." Despite her data-driven argument, the state board overruled her and eliminated Sunday voting in Columbus County anyway. Religious reasons overrode voter data. The consequences of this decision extend far beyond scheduling. Democrats on the board argued that Sunday voting is crucial for black churches and their long-standing souls to the polls organizing tradition, where congregations vote together after church services. Political scientist Dr. Jarvis Hall of North Carolina Central University told ABC 11 directly, "There are obvious efforts to suppress the votes of certain voters." Democratic board member Ben Lanier challenged the religious justification with striking candor. "I'm quite sure there are other things you do on Sunday that you're not so godly that you can't do that." The meeting grew even more contentious when the board also eliminated campus voting sites at NCA and T University, UNC Greensboro, Western Carolina University, and Elon University. Students protested, and Chairman DeLuca threatened to call police if they did not leave. Think carefully about what happened here. A government official used the Lord's Day as justification to remove voting access. The Bible tells us that a power would arise that exercises authority and causes the earth to worship. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. Revelation 13:12. What we see in North Carolina is not the final fulfillment of that prophecy, but it is the spirit of it being tested in plain sight. From Pacific Islands to American elections boards, the pattern is growing clearer. Religious justifications for Sunday restrictions are being spoken openly and on the record. And this is only one piece of the American picture. Let us turn now to another state where blue laws are not fading away. They are being enforced in court. Bergen County, New Jersey holds a distinction that most Americans do not realize. It is the only remaining county in the entire United States that still enforces comprehensive Sunday retail closing laws. While blue laws have been chipped away across the country over the past several decades, Bergen County has held firm. And in 2026, it is not just holding firm. It is going to court. The borough of Paramus filed a lawsuit against the American Dream Mall in August 2025, alleging that the massive entertainment and retail complex has been allowing more than 120 retail stores to operate on Sundays in violation of county blue laws. The lawsuit claims that American Dream committed violations hundreds, if not thousands of times since January, by selling prohibited items including clothing, furniture, and electronics on Sundays. The fines being sought are escalating and aggressive. $250 for a first offense, $1,000 for a second, $2,000 for a third, and $5,000 for every subsequent violation. What makes this case even more striking is that Bergen County voters have had the opportunity to repeal their blue laws and have chosen not to. In 1980, they voted 192,394 to 157,648 to keep them. They voted to keep them again in 1993. The people themselves chose Sunday closing. This is not an ancient relic that nobody cares about. It is a living, enforced, voter-supported law, and it is being fought over in court right now in January 2026. Across the American Bible Belt, a patchwork of Sunday restrictions continues to generate debate, and the language being used by elected officials would surprise anyone who believes that religious justifications for legislation have disappeared. In South Carolina, House Bill 4231, which would allow Sunday liquor sales, managed to pass the House Judiciary Committee with bipartisan support. But it faces fierce resistance in the Senate. Senator Rex Rice stated his opposition in the simplest possible terms: "I think Sunday's God's day, and I just don't think we need to be selling liquor on God's day." There it is. Not a labor argument. Not a public health argument. God's day. That is the reason. And he said it on the record as a state senator in a legislative proceeding. In Texas, Representative Richard Raymond introduced House Bill 1100 to allow Sunday liquor store sales, and the opposition was equally explicit in its religious foundation. Pastor John Johnson testified, "Whether it's a blue law, a green law, or a purple law, we still have God's law. What type of society are we building as we look at trying to change these laws for the purpose of more greed and more indulgence?" In Mississippi, the situation is even more restrictive. The entire state bans all Sunday alcohol sales. House Bill 91 and House Bill 92, which would allow limited Sunday sales between 1 and 6 p.m., remain pending before the Senate. Currently, 28 states across America retain some form of blue laws. 13 states fully ban all car sales on Sundays. These are not obscure regulations from a forgotten era. They are enforced, defended, and expanding in scope in some areas even as they contract in others. The pattern across the American landscape is clear. Religious language is being used openly to defend Sunday restrictions at every level of government, from elections boards to state senates to county courtrooms. In Europe, the push for universal Sunday rest is not a fringe movement. It is an organized coalition with institutional power. The European Sunday Alliance is a network of more than 100 national Sunday alliances, trade unions, employers' organizations, and religious communities working together to protect Sunday as a common day of rest across the European Union. They are actively preparing for the European Day for Work-Free Sunday, scheduled for March 3rd, 2026. On October 14, 2025, the Alliance submitted a formal opinion to the European Commission regarding a possible new EU directive on a right to disconnect and fair telework, positioning Sunday rest as a labor right rather than a religious mandate. But look at who is sitting at the table. COMEX, the Commission of the Bishops' Conferences of the European Union representing Catholic bishops across the continent, is a founding member. The European Confederation of Independent Trade Unions, known as CESI, has been a member since 2017. Catholic bishops and trade unions working side by side to promote Sunday rest across an entire continent. Individual European nations are already acting. Croatia enacted a Sunday shopping ban in 2023, limiting retail stores to a maximum of 16 Sundays per year, with retailers choosing which ones, and requiring 50% premium pay for any Sunday work. The law was challenged in court and declared constitutional. It stands. In the United Kingdom, the government confirmed it has no plans to change existing Sunday trading laws. The Keep Sunday Special campaign, supported by the USDAW trade union and churches working together, remains active, echoing the same church labor alliance seen in the European Sunday Alliance. But the global dimension reaches even further than Europe. Research published by Adventist scholars revealed that the United Nations International Labor Organization has had Sunday rest conventions on the books since 1921. Convention number 14, adopted in 1921, and Convention number 106, adopted in 1957, both promote weekly rest that historically aligned with Sunday. When you trace the lines from Samoa to Tonga to North Carolina, to Bergen County, to the Bible Belt, to the European Union, to the United Nations, you see something that is not national. It is global, and the infrastructure is already in place. For over 60 years, the legal foundation for Sunday laws in America has rested on one argument. They are not religious. In 1961, the Supreme Court ruled in McGowan versus Maryland. That Sunday closing laws served a secular purpose, a uniform day of rest. That ruling has shielded blue laws ever since, but that shield may now be cracking. On January 8, 2026, the Heritage Foundation released Saving America by Saving the Family, calling for states to restore blue laws on Sundays. We've made a special video about it. Link in the description. The report cites McGowan. But unlike the secular framing of 1961, this report argues blue laws provide temporal boundaries for religious observance, family gatherings, outdoor activities, and rest. It calls for reversing spiritual homelessness. Attorney Michael Peabody, president of Founders First Freedom, identified the vulnerability. In 1961, the Supreme Court permitted Sunday laws by accepting the premise that they were labor regulations, not religious mandates. However, the text of this 2026 report may undermine that defense. Bruce Cameron, Reed Larson Professor of Labor Law at Regent University, published a striking response. For 50 years, he litigated religious liberty cases within religious right circles. In all that time, he wrote, no one ever suggested Sunday closing laws were a goal, but he acknowledged something has changed. The Heritage Foundation is a serious voice on the political right. This new proposal ends my witness and opens a new chapter of Adventist discussion about events surrounding the second coming of Jesus. Cameron connected the rise of anti-Semitism among young people, roughly 25% across the spectrum according to polling from Blue Rose Research and the Manhattan Institute, to the pattern that drove the original shift from Sabbath to Sunday worship. His conclusion: my answer is that it is demonic and that history is about to repeat itself. It is time to buckle up for the end of days. The North American division of Seventh-day Adventists called the proposal a disturbing disregard for the religious freedom of all Americans. Bettina Krause, editor of Liberty magazine, had warned in 2024 that using law to enforce religious doctrine would send a clear message that anyone outside the dominant Christian tradition belongs to a lesser class of citizens. The Church State Council noted Heritage's role in spearheading Project 2025, over 50% of which has been implemented according to public trackers. 3ABN aired Is a National Sunday Law Coming Soon? And Prophetic forecast, cloudy with a chance of Sunday. The response has been significant, though not unanimous, as Cameron himself criticized Adventist leaders who previously exaggerated Sunday law threats. But what is beyond debate? A major think tank with direct influence on the current administration has called for restoring Sunday closing laws using language that mixes secular and religious purposes, potentially undermining the very precedent it relies on. That is what the document says. The Bible says this: "A power would arise in the last days that would cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark, and that no man might buy or sell unless they complied." Revelation 13:16-17. The word all is critical. Not some, not a few nations. All. What we see unfolding is the infrastructure being built piece by piece, law by law, alliance by alliance, petition by petition. It is not yet complete, but the foundations are being laid, and the speed at which they are being laid has accelerated dramatically in January 2026. Yet even in the face of all this evidence, there is a truth that must stand above every headline and every court case and every government decree. God knew this was coming. He told us thousands of years in advance. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come, and worship Him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. Revelation 14:7. The first angel's message calls us not to fear the powers of this world. It calls us to fear God, to worship the Creator, to honor the day He blessed and sanctified at the very beginning. So what should you do? Study the Sabbath truth for yourself. Open your Bible. Read Genesis 2. Read Exodus 20. Read Isaiah 58. Read Mark 2. Know why you believe what you believe, so that when the pressure comes, you stand on the rock and not on the opinions of men. Strengthen your relationship with Jesus Christ, because the coming crisis will not test your theology alone. It will test your love for God. Those who merely believe in their heads will falter. Those who love with their hearts will stand. Share this message with others while the doors are still open, because a day may come when speaking these truths will carry a price. And above all, trust the God who showed you these things before they happened. Every fulfilled prophecy is proof that He is in control. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who raised Jesus from the dead, this same God is able to keep you through whatever lies ahead. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Revelation 14:12. That is the promise. That is the call. May we be counted among them. He is coming soon. The signs are all around us, and those who trust in Him will never be put to shame. Blessed are they that do His commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. Revelation 22:14. May that blessing be yours.